Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sexology Podcast. The other thing that you mentioned in the video that was amazing was intellectual intimacy. Like we often don't think about it. And couples have so many different interests. Again, it could be a wonderful opportunity for intellectual conversations, but some of those differences can be very charged. So tell us a little bit about that. How can we navigate that? And what is intellectual intimacy?
Intellectual intimacy is when you're able to share with your partner the things that really turn you on that are of an intellectual sort. Like, let's say in my field, when I read a new study, I enjoy talking to my hubby about that. We make our dates about that. And he's in medicine, and because he has new drugs coming out and new diagnosis for old diseases. This is what really attracted me to him. Every day he was interested in something new. And so when couples are able to align on that, maybe you're interested in how different countries, maybe poorer countries or third world countries, are getting their water. And maybe when you share that with your partner, you can even take that to the next level. Like, let's go volunteer there and understand how they get their clean water, because now that is something that is going to save millions of lives. And yet when you share it with somebody, it gives you the novelty, it gives you something to talk about, and it's another connector. Like, we do this together, we feel more connected.
And what a beautiful way for you to build legacy. And it could be all for different forms of doing things that you feel passionate about. And sometimes even seeing your partner in those contexts can awaken sexual interest and kind of awaken the sexual intimacy piece as well. At least I think that's something that shows up for me. But I think it's wonderful to think about it. But what if our partner is, there are aspects of them kind of intellectually, whether it's the religious beliefs or political beliefs, that's very different in us. How can we manage that?
Well, I think when, the intellectual part is separate, there is a spiritual intimacy. And that's usually when you're aligned with someone, you're attracted to what they feel or what they hold spiritual. What happens with a lot of couples is, if you begin, you admire your partner and what they believe in. Let's say they're a traditional religion and they practice it. They actually pray during the day, and you see their devotion, like you had referred to with the intellectual nas. It makes you more sexually attracted to them, because that devotion, that loyalty is going to show up in this person as a human being, and you're going to experience that in your relationship with them. I think most couples that I know of that are really tight, there are some values that they basically, they don't get together if they're on opposite ends. And one of those values is political. Now, I have known some couples have trouble when they're different political ideations, and then whoever's representing them, and I saw that a lot in the States with the Democrats and the Republicans, there was a lot of conflict over that, because what happens is, because this is your intimate partner, when they don't agree with you politically, you'll oftentimes start attributing to everything about what they believe in to their party. And if they have terrible representation of their party, or people are saying really negative things, you will hear that or assume your partner feels that way. So once again, communication is everything, because you don't want to start having conflict and fights over judgments or assumptions, because judgments are not part of intimacy.
I like that, and I bet many of our colleagues also they saw the same pattern. I know that before like recent experiences, that there are like lots of couples that they know they had different political affiliation, and that wasn't like, was a kind of, historically our family was kind of like affiliated with this party, or the other part of person with the other party, but it wasn't as emotionally charged. And I think because of the what has unfolded in last several years, then it became more emotionally charged. And there's a part of us when it gets scared, our animal brain gets awakened and we're looking for a quick solution. But I wonder then if you have strength in other form of intimacy, for example, if you have strong emotional intimacy, strong physical intimacy, or sexual intimacy, that can help you to remain open. But also, I was thinking about, as you were mentioning all of this wonderful point, was about sometimes it portrays as only sex, but that's for us, we learn, socialize on how kind of like we communicate our emotion through sex, right? How we communicate our physical intimacy through sex. So sometimes people come to my office, and I would imagine that's the case for you, that my partner only wants to have sex with me. They only think that their partner wants physical, sexual intimacy, but what the partner tried to communicate is that's like their emotional way of expressing emotional intimacy and physical intimacy. But that's why I also think it's helpful to have different language for it and kind of examine it in a kind of different ways, but connected. One thing that I often see that it gets really impacted when the relationship is sexless or there are sexual challenges is physical intimacy. The couples, when there are challenges in sex, they avoid touching each other. Sometimes they say, I don't want my partner to get a wrong idea. I don't want to have sex for any reason. And if I touch them, they feel like I'm initiating. Or the other part is that the partner feels that I'm connecting with them because I want to compromise for lack of sex. So there's so many different ways it shows up. So tell us how physical intimacy is different than sexual intimacy.
Well, I think the way that physical intimacy is different than sex is because physical is the expression of basically touch. It's all about touch. Like if a couple has, let's say one person is having chemo, then during that time, sex is oftentimes painful because the mucus isn't, like, it's not lubricating, you're very dry, you're tired, your skin is irritated. But if your partner will hold your hand, and they've done studies on this, it's almost like taking a vitamin, like it's restorative. Whereas sexual intimacy is a passion. There's more motion with it. There's more drive. It's got more of our rudimentary, roots, if you will. Like it's intimate, but yet at the same time, it is so natural. It's innate. It's wired into us. And the perfect situation is when you have both. You have the emotional, the physical, and the sexual. The sexual cannot sustain a marriage. If there's not physical, if there's not touching, and there's not emotional, the sexual alone cannot make it. In a normal relationship, the sexual intimacy is about 10% of the conversation the couple has. If something happens to the sexual intimacy, in other words, one person can't perform, or one person's so resentful that they can't get erect if they're a guy, they can't lubricate if they're a woman, then the whole relationship becomes about sex and the lack of it. So it has an incredible influence on the couple. But at the same time, if you have the other types of intimacy very strongly woven, the relationship will sustain without sex. Because after you have a baby, for example, you can't have sex for a while. It doesn't feel good. And you're not supposed to. If you have a disease like cancer or an autoimmune disease, many times you cannot have sex. Doesn't mean those couples' marriages are failing. As long as they are touching and they're intimate with emotional, and they share some of these other forms, they're going to be okay.